Vincent Kane had built his empire on reading people. 52 years of life, 35 of them, in a world where misreading someone's character could cost you everything, had taught him that true nature revealed itself not in boardrooms or negotiations, but in how you treated someone who couldn't help or hurt you. That's why he stood in the bathroom of a downtown hotel at 6:30 on a cold November morning, watching a makeup artist transform him into someone society had trained itself not to see. "Hold still, Mr. Kane," Elena murmured, applying another layer of theatrical dirt to his cheekbones. She'd been doing this for him for 3 years now, ever since he'd started conducting these tests. She knew the routine, knew the importance, knew that what looked like cruelty was actually the most honest assessment of character he'd ever devised. Marcus, his head of security, leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed, radiating disapproval. "Boss, this cafe is in a transitional neighborhood. Let me go in first, scope it out." "No." Vincent's voice was firm, final. He studied his reflection as Elena worked, watching himself age 2 decades in real time. The expensive haircut was hidden beneath a grimy knit cap. The manicured hands were now stained, nails darkened with authentic street grime. The face that usually commanded boardrooms was becoming the face people crossed the street to avoid. "I need to feel it, need to see their eyes when they decide I don't matter." He was considering a $500,000 investment in Riverside Cafe. Patricia Hendricks, the owner, had submitted an impressive application 3 months ago. Glowing financials, community testimonials, a waiting list for Sunday brunch. Her proposal promised expansion into underserved neighborhoods, creating jobs, building community spaces. On paper, she was exactly the kind of entrepreneur he wanted to support. But Vincent had learned long ago that financial success didn't equal human decency, and he refused to enrich anyone who lacked the most basic quality he valued: compassion for those who had nothing. "The cameras?" he asked, watching Elena add the final touches, yellowing his teeth, creating the appearance of broken capillaries across his nose, making him look like someone who'd spent too many nights in the cold. "Positioned," Marcus confirmed, his tone clipped with frustration. 3 angles inside the cafe. Audio's crystal clear. Button camera in your jacket lapel. Panic signal in your pocket if you need extraction. He paused. "Which you won't use, because you're too damn stubborn." Vincent almost smiled. Marcus had been with him for 15 years, had seen him build Kane Capital Group from a single office into a billion-dollar investment firm. Marcus knew that beneath the tailored suits and commanding presence lived a man who'd once been exactly what this disguise portrayed: powerless, invisible, desperate. That's what made these tests necessary. Vincent remembered what it felt like to be dismissed, to have your humanity questioned, to beg for basic dignity and be denied. "She doesn't know she's being tested," Vincent said, more to himself than to Marcus. "That's the point. I want to see who she is when she thinks no one important is watching. When there's no benefit to kindness, no cost to cruelty." Elena stepped back, surveying her work. "You look like you've been on the streets for months. The clothes smell authentic. I got them from the shelter like you asked. The makeup will hold for hours, even in rain." She met his eyes in the mirror. "Are you sure about this? It's going to be uncomfortable." "It should be," Vincent replied quietly. "If it's not uncomfortable, I'm not really testing anything." He stood, feeling the weight of the disguise settle around him like a second skin. The worn boots pinched slightly. The jacket, thin and torn, offered no real protection against the November cold that was seeping through the hotel windows. The transformation was complete. Vincent Kane, billionaire investor, had disappeared. In his place stood a homeless man, the kind of person most people trained themselves not to see. He thought about the woman who'd saved his life 30 years ago. He'd been 19, genuinely homeless, standing outside a restaurant in Naples in the rain. Rosa Benedetti had been the owner, a woman who'd survived her own hardships and never forgotten what desperation looked like. She'd brought him inside, fed him, didn't ask questions, didn't demand anything in return, just saw a kid who needed help and helped him. That kindness had given him more than a meal. It had given him hope, faith that goodness still existed in a world that had shown him mostly cruelty. Now, with more money than Rosa could have imagined, He tested others to see if that spark of compassion still existed. Most failed. It broke his heart every time. But he kept testing, kept hoping, because the ones who passed deserved to be rewarded, and the ones who failed needed to understand that cruelty had consequences. "Remember the parameters," Vincent said, reviewing the plan one final time. "I make 3 requests: reasonable, polite, within the establishment's capability. If she shows basic compassion at any point, the test ends positively. I invest, she never knows she was tested, everyone wins." He paused. "But if she fails all 3 chances, if she chooses cruelty when compassion costs her nothing, then she reveals her character, and character failures have permanent consequences." Marcus pulled out his tablet, showing Vincent the surveillance feeds. 2 team members were already positioned inside Riverside Cafe, disguised as customers with laptops and coffee. Cameras in the car across the street had clear sightlines through the front windows. Every angle would be covered, every word recorded. "We'll have everything documented," Marcus confirmed. "Multiple perspectives, clear, audio. If she buries herself, we'll have proof." Vincent nodded, then did something he always did before these tests. He closed his eyes and remembered. Remembered being 17 and hungry. Remembered the restaurant owners who'd chased him away, the ones who'd called him trash, the ones who'd looked through him like he was invisible. Remembered the cold, the shame, the slow erosion of dignity that came from being treated as less than human. Then he remembered Rosa, her warm smile, her firm voice telling the other staff that this boy was eating today and no one was going to stop her. "I do this for her," he said quietly. "For Rosa. She's gone now, but her kindness lives on in every test I conduct. Every person who passes honors her memory. Every person who fails shows me why these tests matter." Elena touched his shoulder gently. "Then go show them who they really are." Vincent walked out of the hotel into the November morning, feeling the cold bite through his thin jacket immediately. The rain had started, light but persistent, the kind that soaked through clothes slowly and thoroughly. He shuffled toward Riverside Cafe, 3 blocks away, adopting the posture of someone who'd learned to make themselves small, unthreatening, apologetic for existing. His breath misted in the cold air. Water began seeping into his boots through the worn soles. This was real discomfort, genuine cold, and that was important. If he didn't feel vulnerable, the test meant nothing. As he approached the cafe, he observed it from across the street first. Warm light spilled from the windows. Inside, he could see the morning crowd. Professionals with expensive coats and designer coffee drinks, laptops open, the comfortable hum of people who belonged. The chalkboard outside advertised community values and everyone welcome. Hand-painted murals on the walls depicted diverse faces, inclusive messages. It all looked perfect, welcoming, exactly what Patricia's application had promised. But Vincent had learned that the real test wasn't what you advertised. It was what you did when someone you considered undesirable walked through your door. He crossed the street, water splashing from a puddle onto his already wet pants. Through the window, he could see Patricia Hendricks behind the counter, 41 years old, blonde hair pulled back in a neat ponytail, smile bright as she handed a latte to a well-dressed customer. She laughed at something the customer said, the picture of warmth and hospitality. Vincent wondered if that warmth extended to everyone, or only to people who looked like they could afford her premium prices. The door chimed as he entered. The warmth hit him immediately, a stark contrast to the cold outside that made his genuine shivering intensify. He stood just inside the entrance, water dripping from his clothes onto the polished floor, and watched. Several customers glanced up, then quickly away. One woman actually shifted her expensive purse to her other shoulder, away from him. A man near the window frowned, then returned to his laptop with visible discomfort. Patricia's smile didn't fade immediately. She was serving another customer, hadn't fully registered his presence yet. Vincent used the moment to observe the space. Clean, well-maintained. Prices on the chalkboard menu that suggested this was a premium establishment. A young woman, early 20s, Asian features, worked behind the counter alongside Patricia. Her name tag read Iris. She'd glanced at Vincent when he entered, and unlike the customers, her expression showed concern rather than dismissal. Vincent approached the counter slowly, aware of how his appearance disrupted the cafe's carefully curated atmosphere. Patricia finished with her customer, turned, and saw him. Her smile vanished in less than a second, replaced by something harder. Her eyes traveled from his face to his clothes, to the water pooling at his feet. And Vincent saw the calculation happen. Problem, inconvenience, something to be dealt with and removed. "Excuse me, ma'am." His voice came out hoarse, partly from the cold, partly deliberate. "Could I please have a small black coffee? I have money." He pulled out crumpled bills from his pocket, legitimate currency, exact change, plus $1 tip. His hands trembled. Not entirely an act, the cold was real. "Just something warm, please." Patricia's body language shifted immediately. She stepped back from the counter, creating distance. Her arms crossed over her chest, a physical barrier. "I'm sorry," she said, though her tone suggested she wasn't sorry at all. "We're about to close for cleaning." Vincent glanced at the hours sign on the wall. Open until 2 p.m. It was 9:47 a.m. The lie was transparent, insulting in its obviousness. Around them, customers continued working on laptops, sipping drinks, clearly not being asked to leave for any cleaning. The woman near the window was actually ordering another latte from Iris at that very moment. "Please," Vincent said, keeping his voice respectful, humble. "I just need something warm. I can pay, see?" He placed the money on the counter, bills smoothed as flat as his shaking hands could manage. "I won't cause any trouble. Just one coffee." Patricia didn't touch the money, didn't even look at it. Her jaw tightened, eyes narrowing slightly. "Sir, I said we're closing. You need to leave." Her voice had an edge now, the service industry politeness fraying to reveal something colder underneath. This was the first wave, the first chance. A reasonable request, money offered, polite demeanor. All Patricia had to do was pour coffee that was already brewed, take his money, show basic human decency. The test could end here, positively, with Vincent investing and Patricia never knowing she'd been evaluated. But she was choosing refusal, choosing to see him as a problem rather than a customer, letting his appearance override his humanity. Vincent increased the desperation in his voice, giving her a second opportunity. "Ma'am, I've been outside all night. It's cold and wet. Just one small coffee, please. I'm not asking for charity. I have money right here." He gestured to the bills on the counter, his voice cracking authentically. "Please, I won't bother anyone. I'll take it to go." Patricia's irritation was visible now, no longer masked by customer service training. "We have the right to refuse service to anyone," she said, her voice loud enough that several customers looked up. "I'm asking you politely to leave before I have to call someone." The threat was clear, not, "before I call my manager." There was no manager, she owned the place. She meant police, security, someone to forcibly remove him, for the crime of asking to buy coffee while looking poor. Vincent noted this carefully, watching her face, seeing not just discomfort, but something darker, contempt, disgust, the kind of judgment that dismissed his humanity entirely. Iris, the young barista, had stopped making the latte. She was watching the interaction with visible discomfort, her hands frozen on the espresso machine. Vincent caught her eye for just a moment, saw the conflict there. She wanted to help, but was clearly afraid of Patricia's response. "I understand," Vincent said quietly, gathering his money from the counter with shaking hands. Patricia hadn't touched it, hadn't even acknowledged it, as if his currency was somehow contaminated by his appearance. "I'm sorry to bother you." He turned to leave, but this was part of the test too, giving her space to reconsider, to feel any guilt, to call him back. Some people failed the first wave, but caught themselves, realized they'd been cruel, corrected course. Those people passed, because recognizing your own callousness and choosing differently showed character. Patricia didn't call him back. Instead, as he reached the door, he heard her say to Iris, voice deliberately loud, "Finally, I was about to call the cops. Can't have people like that making customers uncomfortable. People like that, not homeless people, or even that man. People like that," a phrase designed to dehumanize, to create a category of human beings unworthy of basic consideration. Vincent paused at the door, hand on the handle, giving her one more moment, one more chance to show any compassion, any recognition that she'd just refused a simple request from someone in genuine need. She'd turned away, was already wiping down the counter where his money had been, as if erasing evidence of his presence. The first wave was complete. The first chance refused. Vincent stepped back outside into the rain, which had intensified. He walked slowly to the corner, then stopped, leaning against the brick wall of the adjacent building. Through the cafe window, he could see Patricia returning to normal operations, laughing with a customer. The incident already forgotten. His team's voice came through, the nearly invisible earpiece. "Boss, we got everything. First refusal documented. You want to end it here?" "No," Vincent murmured, barely moving his lips. "I need to be sure. Need to know if there's any compassion in her at all. I'm going back in." He waited 5 minutes, letting the cold and rain intensify his appearance. Water ran down his face, soaked through his jacket, made his shivering completely genuine. Then he pushed away from the wall and returned to the cafe door. This was the second wave, the escalation. Some people failed once, but showed humanity when confronted with increased desperation. This was her second chance. The door chimed again as he entered. This time, Patricia's reaction was immediate and hostile. "I told you to leave," she said sharply, abandoning her customer mid-transaction. "You need to go, now." "Please," Vincent said, his voice breaking with cold and what sounded like desperation. "I'm begging you. I just need help. I'm so cold. Just one coffee. I'll pay double." He pulled out more money, his entire axe worth of bills, showing he had resources, showing this wasn't about money. "Please, I'm not a bad person. I just need—" "Sir, I'm calling the police right now if you don't leave." Patricia had her phone out, was already dialing or pretending to. "You're trespassing. You're making my customers uncomfortable. This is your final warning." The second wave was harsher, more public. She was performing now, making a spectacle of his removal for the benefit of her other customers, establishing that she was protecting them from this threat, this problem, this person who'd dared to ask for basic human dignity twice. But this wave also revealed something else, the compassionate witness. Iris had been watching the entire exchange, and as Patricia threatened to call the police, Iris quietly poured a small coffee. She added a lid, her hands moving with practiced efficiency, and began walking toward the counter with it. "Patricia," Iris said softly, "I can just give him—" "No." Patricia's voice was ice. She turned on Iris with sudden fury. "Absolutely not. Put that down, now." Iris hesitated, the coffee cup in her hands, clearly torn between compassion and self-preservation. "It's already poured. It'll just go to waste if—" "Iris Chen, if you give him anything at all, you're fired. Do you understand me? Put it down." The threat hung in the air. Vincent watched this exchange carefully, seeing Iris's face journey from determination to fear to reluctant compliance. She set the coffee down on the back counter, her hands trembling slightly, her eyes meeting Vincent's with an apology he could see was genuine. This moment mattered. This was the contrast Vincent always looked for, the person who showed compassion despite risk, despite cost, despite authority telling them not to. Iris had tried. She'd risked her job, however briefly, to show basic human kindness. She'd passed a test she didn't know she was taking. Patricia, meanwhile, had not only refused again, but had actively prevented compassion, had threatened to fire someone for trying to help. The second wave revealed pattern, not just discomfort. This wasn't about safety or policy. This was about power, about enforcing hierarchy, about punishing vulnerability. "I'm sorry," Vincent said to Iris, his voice genuine. Then to Patricia, "I'll go. I'm sorry for bothering you." "You should be," Patricia said coldly. "And don't come back. If I see you on this block again, I'm not just calling the police. I'm pressing charges for harassment." Vincent left again, but this time he didn't go far. He positioned himself across the street, partially hidden by a delivery truck, and watched through the cafe windows. Patricia had returned to her customers, was now telling them about the encounter. He couldn't hear the words, but he could see her gestures, her expression. She was making light of it, perhaps even joking about it. Several customers laughed. One nodded approvingly. The man by the window gave her a thumbs up. She was bonding with them over his exclusion, creating community through cruelty. establishing herself as the protector of civilized space against the intrusion of people like him. This was the second wave complete, not just refusal, but active cruelty, performed for an audience, with no remorse. Vincent's team confirmed through his earpiece. Second wave documented. She threatened police, prevented the barista from helping, joked about it afterward. Boss, this is enough. We can end it. One more, Vincent said quietly, watching Patricia laugh with her customers. I need to give her a final chance. Need to see if there's any humanity at all when faced with genuine desperation. He waited another 10 minutes, letting himself get colder, wetter, more desperate looking. The rain was steady now, and his shivering was completely real. His feet were numb in the worn boots. Water had soaked through to his skin. This wasn't comfortable. It wasn't supposed to be. If he was going to judge someone for refusing compassion, he needed to genuinely need that compassion. Then he approached the cafe one final time. Third wave. Last chance. He'd make his desperation undeniable, his humanity impossible to ignore, his need for help completely clear. And if she still chose cruelty, if she still refused the most basic human compassion when it cost her nothing to give it, then the test would be complete. She would have revealed exactly who she was. The door chimed. Patricia's head snapped up, and her face transformed into pure fury. Are you kidding me? She shouted, abandoning all pretense of customer service. I told you not to come back. Please. Vincent's voice was raw now, breaking with cold and what sounded like tears. Please, I'm begging you. I'm not trying to cause trouble. I'm so cold, I'm so tired. I just need help. Please, I'm a human being. Let the last words carry weight. Let them be a direct appeal to her humanity, to any compassion that might exist beneath her anger. Patricia came around the counter, and for a moment, Vincent thought she might physically remove him herself. Instead, she grabbed the coffee that Iris had poured earlier, still sitting on the back counter, still hot, steam rising from the lid. Vincent watched her pick it up, watched her walk toward him with it, and for one brief moment, he wondered if she was going to give it to him, if she was going to pass the test at the last possible second. She didn't. Patricia walked past him to the door, opened it wide, and poured the entire cup onto the sidewalk outside. The hot coffee steamed as it hit the cold, wet concrete, running into the gutter, wasted deliberately, theatrically. She maintained eye contact with Vincent throughout, making sure he understood the message. I would rather waste this than give it to you. This is what I think of serving people like you, she said, her voice loud enough for everyone in the cafe to hear. You're banned, permanently. Don't ever come back to this block. If I see you again, I'm calling the police and pressing charges for trespassing and harassment. She pulled out her phone and took his photo, the flash making him blink. I'm sending this to every business owner in this neighborhood. You're done here. The cruelty was complete. Not just refusal, not just exclusion, but active, deliberate waste to prove a point. She'd rather pour coffee on the ground than serve someone she'd decided was unworthy. And now she was weaponizing his image, trying to ensure he'd be rejected everywhere, trying to make his powerlessness permanent and public. Vincent stood there, genuinely feeling the cold now, the humiliation, the weight of being treated as less than human. He'd done this test dozens of times, knew it was an act, knew his real identity and power, waited just a few blocks away. But in this moment, standing in the doorway of a warm cafe, while rain soaked through his clothes and a woman poured coffee on the ground, rather than show him basic dignity, in this moment, the act touched something real. He remembered being 19, genuinely desperate, and having doors slammed in his face. Remembered what it felt like to be invisible, disposable, worthy of contempt. Patricia returned inside, brushing her hands together as if cleaning off dirt. Sorry about that, everyone, she announced to her customers. Can't let them think they can just come in here whenever they want. Next thing you know, the place becomes a homeless shelter. Several customers laughed. One woman said, "You did the right thing." The man by the window nodded approvingly. Can't be too careful these days. Patricia was basking in their approval, feeding off it. Seriously though, she continued, warming to her audience, I worked too hard to build this business, to have it ruined by people who don't respect boundaries. This is a nice neighborhood. We have standards. More nods, more agreement. She was creating consensus around her cruelty, making it seem reasonable, protective, even virtuous. Only Iris looked distressed. She stood behind the counter, her face pale, her hands gripping the edge of the sink. She'd tried to help, been threatened for it, and now had to watch her boss celebrate the cruelty she'd wanted to prevent. Vincent made note of her name again, her face, her obvious moral discomfort. She'd passed a test she didn't know existed. She deserved to be rewarded for that. Vincent turned and walked away, letting himself be seen leaving, defeated, excluded. He shuffled to the corner, then around it, out of sight of the cafe windows. Marcus was waiting with the sedan, door already open. "Got everything, boss," Marcus said, as Vincent climbed inside, the warmth of the car's heater hitting him like a physical force. Every angle, every word. She buried herself. Vincent sat in silence for a moment, feeling the cold seep out of his bones, watching through the tinted windows as normal life continued on the street. People walking to work, getting coffee, living their lives, most of them never thinking about how they treated the vulnerable, never questioning whether their small cruelties mattered. "Show me," he said finally. Marcus pulled up the footage on his tablet. They watched it together. All three waves, from multiple angles. Patricia's face as she first saw him, the instant dismissal in her eyes, her escalating hostility with each request. The moment she threatened to fire Iris for showing compassion, the theatrical cruelty of pouring the coffee on the ground, the satisfaction on her face as she did it, her laughter afterward, her jokes with customers, her complete absence of remorse or self-reflection. "She failed," Vincent said quietly. It wasn't a question. The evidence was irrefutable. She had 3 chances to show basic human decency, 3 opportunities to see past appearance to humanity. She chose cruelty every single time, and worse, she enjoyed it. Did you see her face when she poured that coffee out? She was satisfied, proud of herself. "What about the barista?" Marcus asked. "Iris Chen, she tried to help." "She passed," Vincent said. "Research her. I want to know everything, financial situation, background, why she's working there, what she needs. She risked her job to show compassion. That matters. She gets rewarded." Marcus made notes on his tablet. "And Patricia Hendricks?" Vincent's voice was cold, final. "She revealed her character. Now she faces the consequences. I want everything. Her lease, her suppliers, her debts, her licenses. I want to know every vulnerability, every pressure point, and I want it by tonight. Tomorrow morning, I'm going back to that cafe, but not like this." He gestured to his disguise. Tomorrow, she meets the real Vincent Kane, and she learns that cruelty has costs. They drove to Vincent's downtown office, where Elena waited to help him remove the disguise. The makeup came off in layers, revealing his actual face, sharp-featured, commanding, the face of someone used to power. The dirty clothes were replaced with a tailored charcoal suit, Italian leather shoes, a Patek Philippe watch that cost more than most people made in a year. The transformation was symbolic, a shedding of vulnerability to reveal the truth beneath. He'd never been powerless. He'd chosen to appear so, to test Patricia's character. And she'd failed catastrophically. While Elena worked, Vincent's research team compiled their report. Patricia Hendricks, 41, had owned Riverside Cafe for 6 years. She was heavily in debt, $300,000 owed to various creditors, 2 months behind on property taxes, facing potential foreclosure within 90 days. Her application to Vincent's investment fund had been desperate, though she'd hidden that desperation well behind impressive revenue numbers and community testimonials. But the deeper research revealed the pattern Vincent had suspected. 7 formal complaints to the city council about loitering homeless individuals near her cafe. 3 police calls in the past year for trespassing by people who'd simply been sitting on the public bench outside. 2 former employees had quit, both citing her treatment of poor customers in their exit interviews. One had written, "Patricia treats people differently based on how they look. If you're well-dressed, you're valued. If you're not, you're trash." Online reviews told a similar story. Filtered through the positive testimonials were occasional comments. "Great coffee but weird vibe. Saw the owner refuse service to someone who looked homeless." Beautiful space, but noticed they're very selective about who they welcome. Felt uncomfortable when owner made a scene about someone asking for water. The pattern was undeniable. This wasn't one bad day or a single mistake. This was who Patricia was, someone who measured human worth by appearance, who gate-kept access to basic services based on perceived social status, who enjoyed the power of exclusion. She'd been failing this test for years. The difference was that today, someone with power had been watching. Vincent's team also researched Iris Chen, 23 years old, nursing student at community college, working 3 part-time jobs to support herself and send money to her mother, who was undergoing cancer treatment in California. Straight A student despite her workload, volunteered at a free clinic on weekends. Her previous employer had written in a reference letter, "Iris once gave her lunch to a homeless woman outside our restaurant and went hungry herself that shift. She has the most compassionate heart I've ever encountered." Vincent read this and thought of Rosa Benedetti, the woman who'd fed him in Naples 30 years ago. Iris reminded him of Rosa, someone who saw need and responded with kindness, regardless of cost or convenience, someone who'd passed a test of character that most people failed. "She's exactly who deserves a chance," Vincent said to Marcus. "She's struggling, working herself to exhaustion, and she still tried to help someone she thought couldn't help her back. That's real character. That's what I'm looking for." By evening, Vincent's legal team had mobilized. They'd purchased Patricia's building lease from her landlord. She was now Vincent's tenant, though she didn't know it yet. They'd acquired her outstanding debts from 3 creditors, consolidating her financial obligations under Vincent's control. They'd contacted the health department about a routine inspection scheduled for tomorrow afternoon. They'd reached out to her coffee supplier, Vincent's Corporation, owned the parent company, and flagged her account for contract review. Within 12 hours, every aspect of Patricia's business was under Vincent's control. She had no idea the walls were closing in. She'd gone home tonight thinking she'd successfully protected her cafe from an unwanted intrusion, never imagining that the homeless man she'd humiliated was actually the investor who held her future in his hands. Vincent reviewed the plan with his core team at 8 p.m. in his office, overlooking the city. "I want the reveal public," he said, his voice carrying the weight of absolute decision. "Tomorrow morning, 9 a.m., peak hours. I want her customers to see, her employees to witness. I want it documented." Marcus suggested a private confrontation might be more merciful, but Vincent shook his head. She humiliated that homeless man publicly. She performed her cruelty for an audience, made a spectacle of exclusion. Her judgment should be equally public. She wanted witnesses to her power. She'll have witnesses to her consequences. They confirmed timing. Vincent would arrive at 8:55 a.m., 5 minutes before the reveal. Security would enter first, ensure Patricia couldn't flee. 2 team members would be inside as customers, recording everything. A local business reporter had been tipped anonymously about a major investment announcement at Riverside Cafe. They'd arrive at 9:05 to capture the aftermath. Iris had been contacted obliquely, asked if she'd be working tomorrow morning, told something important would happen. She'd agreed to be there, though she had no idea what was coming. Vincent wanted her present for the reward, wanted her to see that compassion had value, that kindness was noticed and honored. Vincent stood at his office window as night fell over the city, thinking about the test, about Patricia's cruelty, about Iris's courage. He thought about all the tests he'd conducted over the years, all the people who'd failed, the few who'd passed. Most people, when given the choice between compassion and cruelty, between seeing someone's humanity or dismissing it, chose the easier path. They chose comfort, over conscience, convenience over character. But not everyone. Rosa hadn't. Iris hadn't. And somewhere in this city, right now, someone else was choosing kindness, unaware they were passing a test they didn't know they were taking. That's why Vincent kept testing. Why he'd keep putting on disguises, making himself vulnerable, seeing who people really were when they thought it didn't matter. Because it did matter. Character mattered. How you treated the powerless mattered. And those who forgot that lesson would learn it the hard way. He thought about Patricia, probably at home now, relaxed, satisfied with her day. She'd protected her cafe, maintained her standards, kept out the riffraff. She had no idea that tomorrow morning her world would end, that the homeless man she'd humiliated would return as the billionaire who controlled her fate, that every cruel word, every dismissive gesture, every moment of enjoyed power over the vulnerable had been recorded, documented, preserved as evidence of who she really was. Vincent didn't enjoy this part, the destruction, the judgment, the permanent consequences, but he believed in it, believed that character failures should have costs, that cruelty shouldn't go unpunished, that people who measured human worth by appearance needed to learn that everyone matters. The powerless, the vulnerable, the desperate, they were human beings, deserving of basic dignity. And anyone who forgot that, anyone who chose cruelty when compassion cost them nothing, would face his judgment. He picked up his phone and texted Marcus. "Tomorrow morning, make sure everything's ready. This one matters." Marcus responded immediately. "Always does, boss. Always does." Vincent went home, slept restlessly, dreaming of cold rain and warm cafes, of doors closing and coffee being poured on the ground. He woke at 5 a.m., reviewed the plan one final time, dressed in his most expensive suit, navy Tom Ford, Hermes tie, shoes that cost $3,000. The contrast with yesterday's disguise would be stark, undeniable. She'd see exactly who she'd dismissed, exactly whose humanity she'd denied. At 8:50 a.m., Vincent's black Mercedes S-Class pulled up outside Riverside Cafe, followed by a second vehicle carrying Marcus and 2 security personnel. Through the tinted windows, Vincent could see the cafe was moderately full. Morning regulars getting their coffee, a few people at tables with laptops. Patricia was behind the counter, looking relaxed, laughing with a customer. "Ready, boss?" Marcus asked. Vincent adjusted his tie, feeling the weight of what was about to happen. "Let's show her who she really is," he said. They emerged from the vehicles with practiced precision. Vincent first, then Marcus and security flanking him, moving with the kind of coordination that announced importance, that commanded attention. Customers inside the cafe noticed immediately. Expensive cars, obvious wealth, something significant happening. A few pulled out phones, sensing a moment worth capturing. Patricia saw the commotion through the window. Her curiosity was visible, then calculation. These were clearly important people, potential high-value customers. She smoothed her apron, adjusted her ponytail, prepared her most welcoming smile. She had no idea she was looking at yesterday's homeless man. Her mind couldn't make that connection. The categories were too separate in her worldview. Homeless people and billionaires didn't occupy the same reality. Vincent entered, and the door chimed with the same sound it had made yesterday when he'd shuffled in cold and desperate. But the atmosphere was completely different now. His presence commanded the space. Conversations stopped. People looked up. Patricia's smile was brilliant, welcoming, the complete opposite of yesterday's contempt. "Good morning," she said warmly, her voice pitched to convey delight at his arrival. "Welcome to Riverside Cafe. What can I get started for you today?" Vincent didn't smile. His expression was cold, assessing, and he let the silence stretch as he walked slowly to the counter. Marcus and security remained by the door, their positioning deliberate, blocking exits, ensuring privacy, making it clear this wasn't a casual visit. Other customers sensed something wrong. The easy morning atmosphere evaporated, replaced by tension. "Ma'am," Vincent said, his voice quiet but carrying. "Do you remember yesterday morning, around 9:45? A man came in here asking for coffee." Patricia's smile faltered. Her eyes flickered with confusion, then the beginning of concern. This wasn't the conversation she'd expected. We had several customers yesterday morning. I'm not sure which." "A homeless man," Vincent continued, his voice still quiet, still controlled. "Wet from the rain, wearing torn clothes. He asked for coffee. He had money. He was polite. Do you remember him?" Understanding began to dawn on Patricia's face, but not the right understanding. She thought this was a complaint, perhaps from a family member or social worker. "Sir, if this is about that incident, I can explain. We have policies about—" He asked 3 times, Vincent interrupted. 3 separate times, he came into your cafe and asked for a simple cup of coffee. He had money. He was cold. He was desperate. Do you remember what you did?" Patricia's face was paling now, her mind racing, trying to understand who this man was, why he cared, what this meant. We have the right to refuse service. There were safety concerns and— You refused him, Vincent said, his voice hardening. The first time you lied and said you were closing. The second time you threatened to call the police. The third time— He paused, letting the silence build. The third time, you poured hot coffee on the ground, rather than serve him. You took his photo and threatened to blacklist him from the entire neighborhood. Patricia's mouth opened, closed. Around them, customers were listening, phones out, recording. Iris had emerged from the back room, her face showing confusion and growing understanding. Marcus stood by the door, arms crossed, ensuring no one left, no one interrupted. I was that homeless man, Vincent said, his voice carrying absolute conviction. Yesterday morning, I was testing you, testing your character, testing whether you deserved the $500,000 investment you applied for from my company. The words landed like physical blows. Patricia's face went from pale to white. Her legs visibly weakened, and she grabbed the counter for support. That was— You couldn't. That's not— I'm Vincent Kane, he continued, watching her world crumble in real time. Kane Capital Group. You submitted an investment application 3 months ago. Beautiful proposal. Talked about community values, inclusive spaces, serving everyone. I wanted to see if those values were real or just marketing. So I disguised myself as someone you'd consider unworthy and asked for basic human decency. Patricia's breathing was rapid now, her mind clearly racing through the implications. But you can't. That's entrapment. That's not fair. Vincent's expression didn't change. What's not fair? Asking for coffee? Having money to pay? Being treated like a human being? Which part of my request was unfair, Patricia? I didn't know it was you, she said desperately, grasping at any defense. How was I supposed to know? If I'd known— Exactly. Vincent cut her off, his voice sharp now. You didn't think I mattered. You saw someone powerless and decided their humanity was irrelevant. That's the problem. That's what this test revealed. You only show respect to people you think can help or hurt you. Everyone else? They're disposable. Patricia's face showed a journey of emotions: shock, horror, desperate calculation, the beginning of tears. Please, you have to understand. I was just protecting my business. I've had problems with homeless people before, and I thought— You thought what? Vincent's voice was cold. That poverty equals danger? That desperation equals criminality? That someone's appearance gives you the right to strip their dignity? He leaned forward slightly. I looked poor, that's all. I didn't threaten anyone, didn't steal anything, didn't do anything except ask to buy coffee while looking like I couldn't afford it. And you decided I didn't deserve basic human decency. Iris was watching with her hand over her mouth, tears in her eyes. Not for Patricia, but understanding now what had happened, why the homeless man had looked at her with such focus when she'd tried to help. Other customers were recording openly now, capturing every moment, Patricia's humiliation as public as the homeless man's had been. But I was protecting my customers. Patricia tried again, her voice rising with desperation. They were uncomfortable. I have a responsibility to— To what? Vincent's voice cut through her excuse like a blade. To make sure only the right kind of people feel welcome? To gatekeep basic services based on appearance? Your customers were uncomfortable because you trained them to be, because you created an environment where excluding the vulnerable is seen as protection rather than cruelty. Patricia looked around wildly, seeking support, finding none. The customers who'd nodded approvingly yesterday were silent now, some looking ashamed, others defensive but quiet. She was alone in her exposure, her character revealed for everyone to see. I've had bad experiences, she said, her voice breaking. I've been stolen from, had people cause problems. I was just trying to prevent. So you punish everyone who reminds you of those experiences? Vincent's voice was relentless. You made me pay for someone else's sins. That's not caution, Patricia. That's prejudice. You decided that one person's appearance meant they deserved to be treated as less than human. You didn't assess behavior. You assessed clothes, cleanliness, perceived social status, and you found me wanting. Anyone would have done the same thing. Patricia's voice was desperate now, grasping at normalization. Anyone would have been uncomfortable. Anyone would have— No, Vincent said firmly, and he turned to point at Iris. She didn't. Iris tried to give me coffee. You threatened to fire her for it. She showed compassion at risk to herself. She passed the test you failed. Iris looked shocked at being mentioned, her face flushing. Patricia turned to look at her, and something ugly crossed her face. Resentment, perhaps, that her employee was being praised while she was being condemned. Please, Patricia said, her voice breaking into genuine tears now. Please, give me another chance. I didn't know. I'll do better. I'll change my policies. I gave you 3 chances, Vincent said, his voice final. 3 opportunities to show basic human compassion. You chose cruelty every single time. You didn't just refuse. You escalated. You threatened. You performed your power over someone you thought was powerless. And then you laughed about it with your customers. You enjoyed it. Patricia's face crumpled. She was crying openly now, mascara running, the polished exterior completely shattered. Around them, customers watched in silence, witnessing judgment being delivered, a cautionary tale unfolding in real time. Vincent let the silence stretch, let her tears flow, let the weight of her failure settle over the cafe like a physical presence. Then he spoke again, his voice carrying the weight of absolute conviction. The philosophy that drove these tests, the moral framework that demanded consequences for cruelty. Let me tell you what I've learned in 52 years of life, he began, his voice quiet but commanding every ear in the room. Wealth doesn't make you, better. Power doesn't make you superior. These things make you more visible, that's all. They're a spotlight. And what that spotlight reveals, what I saw in you when you thought no one important was watching, was ugliness. He paused, letting the words land. Patricia's sobs were the only sound. I've done terrible things in my life, Vincent continued. Built this empire on decisions I'm not proud of. Hurt people who threatened what was mine. Crushed competitors. Made ruthless calls in boardrooms where mercy would have meant weakness. I'm not a good man by most definitions, but I've never forgotten what it's like to be powerless, to be invisible, to beg for basic dignity and be denied. His voice hardened. That's what you did yesterday. You didn't just refuse service. You stripped humanity from someone you decided didn't matter, and you enjoyed it. I saw your face when you poured that coffee on the ground. I saw the satisfaction. That wasn't policy. That wasn't protection. That was cruelty. Pure, deliberate cruelty. Patricia tried to speak, but Vincent raised a hand, silencing her. Compassion isn't complicated, he said. It doesn't require wealth or education or special training. It requires only the recognition that the person before you, regardless of how they look, smell, or sound, is human. That recognition, or its absence, reveals everything about who you are. And you revealed yourself, Patricia. You showed me exactly who you are when you think no one important is watching. He let that truth settle, watching her face, seeing understanding dawn that there would be no mercy, no second chance, no redemption from this judgment. I test people, Vincent said, addressing the entire cafe now, making this universal, making this a lesson for everyone present. I test business owners before I invest. I test managers before I promote them. I test anyone who asks for my resources or my trust. I make myself vulnerable, genuinely vulnerable, and I see what they do. Most people fail. They see someone powerless, and they dismiss them, exclude them, sometimes actively harm them. It breaks my heart every time, but I keep testing, because the ones who pass deserve to be rewarded, and the ones who fail need to understand that character matters, that cruelty has consequences. Patricia was shaking now, understanding that this speech was building to something, that judgment was coming, and it would be absolute. You had 3 chances, Vincent said, his voice dropping to something colder, harder. 3 opportunities to show basic human decency. The first time I asked politely, and you lied about closing. The second time I begged, and you threatened police. The third time, I made my desperation undeniable, and you poured coffee on the ground rather than show me compassion. 3 chances, 3 failures, each one revealing more of who you really are. He pulled out his phone, opened a file, began reading from it. 7 complaints to the city council about homeless people near your cafe. 3 police calls for trespassing against people sitting on public benches, 2 former employees who quit citing your treatment of poor customers, multiple online reviews mentioning your selective service, your unwelcoming attitude towards certain people. He looked up. This wasn't one bad day, Patricia. This is who you are. A pattern of behavior, a history of cruelty. Yesterday was just the first time someone with power was watching. Patricia's face showed she knew what was coming, knew there was no escape, but she tried anyway. Please, I need this business. I have debt, I have bills, I have... And yesterday, that homeless man needed coffee, Vincent interrupted. He needed warmth. He needed basic human dignity. You had what he needed, and you refused to give it. Now you need what I have, and I'm refusing to give it. You understand the connection? Patricia's face crumpled further, but Vincent felt no satisfaction in her pain. This wasn't about enjoying her suffering. This was about consequences, about justice, about ensuring that cruelty didn't go unpunished. Patricia Hendricks, Vincent said formally, making this official, making this permanent. Your investment application is permanently rejected. I will not give $500,000 to someone who measures human worth by appearance. I will not enrich someone who enjoys power over the vulnerable. Patricia's sob was audible, but Vincent continued, his voice inexorable. Furthermore, effective immediately, I own your building lease. You have 30 days to vacate these premises. I've purchased your outstanding debts, $300,000 worth, and I'm calling them due. Full payment required within 15 days, or I proceed with collection and legal action. I've contacted your suppliers, your coffee distributor, your bakery supplier, your equipment leasing company. All contracts are under review and will likely be terminated. I've notified the Health Department and Business Licensing Board of Complaints against your establishment. An inspection is scheduled for this afternoon. Each sentence landed like a hammer blow. Patricia's legs gave out, and she sank to the floor behind the counter, her world literally collapsing around her. Customers watched in stunned silence, some recording, all witnessing the consequences of cruelty delivered publicly and permanently. Your reputation in this community is over, Vincent continued, his voice carrying no mercy, no room for negotiation. Every business owner in this district will know what you did, who you really are. I'm ensuring that. You wanted to blacklist a homeless man from the neighborhood. Instead, you've blacklisted yourself. You'll find that doors close quickly when people understand your character. He paused, letting the full weight of the consequences settle. Patricia was sobbing on the floor, her polished exterior completely shattered, her carefully constructed business life ending in real time. You're finished here, Vincent said finally. Not because of one mistake, not because you had a bad day, but because you revealed who you are when you think no one important is watching. And what you revealed was someone who lacks the most basic human quality I value, compassion for those who have nothing. The silence that followed was absolute. Patricia's sobs echoed in the space. Marcus stood by the door, ensuring no one left, ensuring everyone witnessed this moment completely. The security team maintained their positions, professional and impassive. Then Vincent turned to Iris, who stood frozen behind the counter, her face showing shock and something else. Vindication, perhaps, or relief that someone had finally called out the cruelty she'd witnessed and been forced to participate in. Iris Chen, Vincent said, his voice softening slightly. Come here, please. Iris approached hesitantly, clearly terrified she was about to be judged as well. She stopped a few feet from Vincent, her hands clasped in front of her, her expression showing she was bracing for consequences. Yesterday, Vincent said, you tried to help me. Do you remember? Iris nodded mutely, tears beginning to form in her eyes. Patricia threatened to fire you if you gave me coffee, Vincent continued. But your instinct was compassion. Your first response when you saw someone in need was to help, regardless of cost to yourself. That matters, Iris. That matters more than you know. Iris's tears spilled over, running down her cheeks. I should have done more, she whispered. I should have. You did what you could within your power, Vincent interrupted gently. You showed humanity when your boss was showing cruelty. You risked your job, your income, your ability to support yourself and your mother, to show basic kindness to someone you thought couldn't help you back. That's real character, Iris. That's what I test for. And you passed. Iris looked confused now, hope beginning to dawn on her face, but afraid to believe it. Vincent pulled an envelope from his jacket pocket. "This cafe is now yours," he said, handing it to her. "Full ownership, transferred to your name today. All debts cleared, all contracts renegotiated in your favor. Additionally, your student loans, all $40,000, are paid in full, and there's a scholarship fund being established in your name for other nursing students who demonstrate compassion in their care. $100,000 to start." Iris's hands trembled as she took the envelope, her face showing she couldn't process what she was hearing. I can't. This isn't." "It is," Vincent said firmly. "Kindness matters, Iris. Compassion has value. You showed both when it cost you something to do so. Now you're being rewarded. Use this opportunity well. Run this cafe the way it should have been run all along, as a place that welcomes everyone, that sees humanity in all people, that measures worth by character rather than appearance." Iris collapsed into a chair, the envelope clutched to her chest, sobbing with relief and disbelief and overwhelming gratitude. Other customers were crying now too, moved by the contrast. Cruelty punished, compassion rewarded, justice delivered in equal measure. Vincent turned back to Patricia, who was still on the floor, watching this reversal with horror. Her employee was now her replacement, her kindness rewarded, while Patricia's cruelty cost her everything. "You wanted to know the difference between you and Iris?" Vincent said quietly. "Yesterday you both had the same choice. See someone in need and help them, or dismiss them as unworthy. She chose compassion despite risk. You chose cruelty despite having everything to give. That difference is everything. And now you both face the consequences of your choices." He signaled to Marcus, who moved forward with the security team. "Patricia Hendricks, you need to leave this establishment. It's no longer yours. If you return, you'll be trespassing. Gather your personal belongings from the office. You have 10 minutes. Patricia was escorted to the back, her sobs echoing through the cafe. Customers watched in silence, processing what they'd witnessed. A test of character, a judgment delivered, consequences that were absolute and permanent. Some looked ashamed, perhaps remembering their own approving nods yesterday when Patricia had poured coffee on the ground. Others looked thoughtful, clearly reconsidering how they treated people they considered beneath them. Vincent remained in the center of the cafe, his presence commanding, his message delivered. The reporter arrived at 9:05 as planned, camera crew in tow, capturing the aftermath. Vincent gave a brief statement. Character matters. How you treat people when you think no one important is watching reveals who you really are. Today, someone learned that cruelty has consequences. I hope others learn from her mistake. By noon, the story was everywhere. Multiple customers had posted their recordings on social media. Billionaire tests cafe owner's character, she fails spectacularly. The footage of Patricia pouring coffee on the ground, of Vincent's reveal, of his philosophy speech, of Iris receiving her reward, all of it went viral within hours. News outlets picked it up. Investment mogul's undercover test exposes business owners' cruelty to homeless. Patricia's name trended on Twitter. Her photo from yesterday, the moment she poured coffee on the ground, satisfaction visible on her face, became a meme symbolizing entitled cruelty, the face of someone who measures human worth by appearance. The comments were brutal. She refused to serve a homeless man coffee. That's not business protection, that's just cruel. Imagine being so heartless you'd rather waste coffee than help someone in need. This is what happens when you forget basic human decency. Other businesses in the district panicked, reviewing their policies, training staff on compassion and inclusion. Some changes were genuine, sparked by recognition that they'd been guilty of similar cruelty. Others were fear-based. What if we're tested next? But the effect was the same. Treatment of vulnerable populations improved, at least temporarily, as the lesson of Patricia's fall spread through the business community. Former victims of Patricia emerged with their stories. A nursing mother who'd been banned for trying to breastfeed in a corner booth. An elderly man with a disability who'd been mocked for moving slowly and taking up space. A veteran with PTSD who'd been refused service because his trembling hands made Patricia uncomfortable. The pattern was undeniable, documented, impossible to dismiss as one bad day or a misunderstanding. Patricia tried damage control, posting on Facebook that she'd been set up by a cruel test, that it was unfair to judge her this way. The response was immediate and harsh. You refused to serve a homeless man. That's not a setup. That's your character. The test was asking for coffee. You failed by being cruel. You took his photo and tried to blacklist him from the neighborhood. Don't play victim now. She attempted to rally support from other business owners, claiming Vincent was dangerous for testing people, that this created an environment where no one could be authentic because anyone might be secretly wealthy. But the business community distanced themselves, afraid of association, afraid they might be next, afraid that defending cruelty would mark them as cruel. Within a week, Patricia was toxic, unemployable in the service industry, blacklisted from business loans. Her bankruptcy filing made local news, another chapter in the cautionary tale. She gave one interview to a sympathetic blogger, still claiming victimhood, still insisting the test was manipulative and unfair. The comments section destroyed her. You poured coffee on the ground rather than serve a human being. Own your cruelty. The test was fair. The request was reasonable. You failed because of who you are, not because of what he did. 3 months after the test, the space that had been Riverside Cafe was thriving under new management. Iris had renamed it Second Chances Cafe, a name that honored both her opportunity and her philosophy. The menu included pay-what-you-can options. Free coffee was available for anyone who needed it, no questions asked. The walls featured art from local homeless individuals. Employment priority went to people transitioning out of homelessness or recovering from addiction. The cafe became a model of inclusive business, featured in articles about social entrepreneurship, visited by other business owners wanting to learn how to balance profit with compassion. Iris graduated from nursing school with honors, continued running the cafe as a social enterprise, used her platform to advocate for housing policy and dignity for all people. She never forgot that one moment, choosing kindness despite threat of consequences, had changed her entire life. She paid forward Vincent's gift by creating a scholarship fund for other struggling students, by hiring people others wouldn't hire, by proving that compassion could be both moral and profitable. Patricia, meanwhile, faded into cautionary tale status. Her name appeared in business ethics courses as an example of character failure. Her photo, pouring coffee on the ground, was used in training materials about implicit bias and the importance of dignity in service industries. She'd become a symbol, a warning, a permanent reminder that cruelty has consequences. She moved to a different state, tried to rebuild under a different name, but the story followed her. Someone always recognized her, always shared the video, always asked, "Aren't you the woman who refused to serve that homeless man?" She'd spend the rest of her life understanding, too late, that how you treat people when you think no one important is watching defines your character. And character failures, once exposed, are permanent. Vincent watched all of this unfold from his office, monitoring the ripple effects of one test, one judgment, one moment of exposed cruelty. He felt no satisfaction in Patricia's suffering. That wasn't the point. The point was the lesson, the warning, the reminder to everyone watching that character matters, that compassion counts, that cruelty has costs. He thought about Rosa Benedetti, the woman who'd saved him in Naples 30 years ago. She'd died 5 years back, never knowing the empire her kindness had built, never understanding that the desperate kid she'd fed had become a billionaire who tested others to honor her memory. Every person who passed his tests was a tribute to her. Every person who failed was a reminder of why her compassion had mattered so much. 6 months after Patricia's test, Vincent stood in a hospital in a different city, disguised as an elderly woman in a stained hospital gown. No insurance, no family, labored breathing, obvious pain. He waited in the ER hallway, watching nurses pass by, watching doctors check charts, watching security guards make their rounds. Most didn't see him. Some saw and looked away. A few saw, and their faces showed calculation, problem, liability, someone who'd complicate their shift. Then a young doctor stopped, exhausted from a double shift, ready to go home, but he stopped. He looked at Vincent's disguised face, saw the distress, saw the humanity. "Ma'am, let me take a look at you." The doctor was gentle, thorough. Got Vincent admitted despite the lack of insurance. Fought with administration to make it happen. Stayed an extra hour to ensure stability. Showed compassion when it would have been easier to walk past, when no one would have blamed him for prioritizing his own. Exhaustion when helping meant risk and complication. In the parking lot, in a sedan with tinted windows, Marcus showed Vincent the footage. The doctor's care, his advocacy, his refusal to let bureaucracy override humanity. Vincent made a note of the doctor's name. Dr. James Chen, 28 years old, crushing student debt, working doubles to pay it off, but still stopping, still caring, still seeing patients as people rather than problems. Find out everything about him, Vincent told Marcus. Background, financial situation, career goals. I think we just found our new chief of medicine for the clinic we're opening downtown. Marcus smiled. Another one who passed. Another one who passed, Vincent confirmed. Some people still showed compassion, still chose kindness, still proved that humanity existed even in systems designed to crush it. Those people deserved to be rewarded, to be given opportunities that matched their character. The tests would continue. They had to. Because in a world that increasingly measured worth by wealth, by appearance, by convenience, someone needed to remind people that character mattered. That how you treated the powerless revealed who you really were. That compassion wasn't weakness. It was the only thing that separated humans from monsters. Vincent had been powerless once. Had stood in the rain, desperate and invisible, until someone saw him, truly saw him. And that moment had changed everything. Now he watched, tested, judged, and occasionally, too rarely, but occasionally, he found someone who passed, someone who proved that compassion still existed. Those people, he rewarded. The others? They learned. One way or another, everyone learned. Vincent returned to his office as night fell over the city. He stood at the window, looking out at the lights, thinking about all the tests he'd conducted, all the people he'd evaluated, all the moments of revealed character. Most people failed. That was the truth that haunted him. When given the choice between compassion and cruelty, between seeing someone's humanity or dismissing it, most chose the easier path. But not all. Rosa hadn't, Iris hadn't, Dr. Chen hadn't, and somewhere in this city, right now, someone else was choosing kindness, unaware they were passing a test they didn't know they were taking. That's why he kept testing, why he'd keep putting on disguises, making himself vulnerable, seeing who people really were when they thought it didn't matter. Because it did matter. Character mattered. How you treated the powerless mattered, and those who forgot that lesson would learn it the hard way. He thought about Patricia, broken and bankrupt, her life defined by one test, one moment of cruelty, one choice that revealed her true character. He felt no joy in her destruction, but he felt no regret either. She'd had 3 chances to show compassion, 3 opportunities to see past appearance to humanity. She'd chosen cruelty every time. The consequences were hers to bear. He thought about Iris, thriving in her new cafe, using her opportunity to help others, proving that goodness was rewarded and kindness had value. She'd risked everything to show compassion to someone she thought couldn't help her back. Now she had everything: financial security, meaningful work, the satisfaction of knowing her character had been tested and found worthy. That was the balance Vincent sought. Not just punishment for cruelty, but reward for compassion. Not just consequences for failure, but opportunity for those who passed. Justice in both directions, ensuring that character, good or bad, determined destiny. He picked up his phone and texted Marcus. Next week, I'm thinking a restaurant this time. High-end place, lots of wealthy clientele. Let's see how they treat an elderly person who can't afford the menu, but desperately needs to use the restroom. Prepare the disguise. Marcus responded, Always ready, boss. Who are we testing? Vincent sent him the file. A restaurant owner who'd applied for expansion capital, who claimed to value community and inclusion, whose marketing emphasized welcoming atmosphere for all. On paper, perfect. In practice, that's what the test would reveal. Remember, Vincent typed, 3 chances, reasonable requests. If they show any compassion, we invest and they never know. If they fail, all 3. He paused, then finished. Then they learn what Patricia learned, that cruelty has consequences, that character matters, that you never know who's watching. He set down his phone and returned to the window, watching the city lights, thinking about tomorrow's test, about all the tests to come. The cycle would continue. The evaluations would persist, because someone needed to watch, needed to test, needed to ensure that cruelty didn't go unpunished and compassion didn't go unrewarded. Vincent Kane had been powerless once. He'd never forgotten what that felt like. And now, with all the power in the world, he used it for one purpose: to remind people that everyone matters. The homeless, the sick, the poor, the desperate. They were human beings, deserving of basic dignity. And anyone who forgot that, anyone who chose cruelty when compassion cost them nothing, would face his judgment. You never knew who was watching. That was the point. That was the lesson. That was the warning. Treat everyone with dignity. Show compassion to the powerless. See humanity in all people. Because the homeless man asking for coffee might be a billionaire testing your character. The elderly woman in the hospital might be an investor evaluating your worth. The desperate person at your door might be the one who determines your future. Character revealed itself in how you treated people who couldn't help or hurt you. And character, once revealed, determined everything. Vincent had tested Patricia Hendricks. She'd failed. She'd revealed herself as someone who measured human, all worth by appearance, who enjoyed power over the vulnerable, who chose cruelty when compassion cost her nothing. And now she served as a cautionary tale, a warning to others, a permanent reminder that character failures have permanent consequences. The story had spread far beyond one cafe, one test, one woman's fall. It had become a cultural moment, a shared reference point, a reminder that went viral and stayed viral because it touched something fundamental. The fear that we're being judged, the hope that kindness matters, the satisfaction of seeing cruelty punished. People shared the story with comments like, "This is why I always try to be kind. You never know who's watching." Treat everyone with respect, not because they might be rich, but because they're human. Character is what you do when you think no one important is watching. Turns out, someone's always watching. The lesson had landed. The warning had been received. And Vincent would keep delivering it, test after test, judgment after judgment, consequence after consequence, until people understood that compassion wasn't optional, that cruelty had costs, that character was everything. He turned from the window, picked up the file for next week's test, began reviewing the target's application. Another business owner, another claim of inclusive values, another opportunity to see if words matched actions, if marketing matched character, if compassion existed when no one important was watching. The test would be fair, the request would be reasonable, 3 chances would be given. And if they failed, if they chose cruelty, if they revealed themselves as someone who lacked basic human decency, then they would face the same judgment Patricia had faced, public, permanent, absolute. But if they passed, if they showed compassion, if they proved that kindness still existed, then they'd gain an ally who could change their life, a reward that matched their character, an opportunity that honored their humanity. That was the balance. That was the justice. That was why Vincent Kane, billionaire investor, kept putting on disguises and making himself vulnerable and testing people's character, because Rosa Benedetti had tested him 30 years ago, though she hadn't known it. She'd seen a desperate kid and chosen compassion. And that choice had saved his life, built his empire, created everything he'd become. Now he honored her memory by testing others, by rewarding those who passed, by ensuring those who failed understood the cost of cruelty. The cycle would continue. The tests would persist. The judgments would be delivered. And somewhere, someone was being tested right now. Someone was choosing between compassion and cruelty, between seeing humanity or dismissing it, between passing or failing a test they didn't know they were taking. Vincent hoped they chose wisely, because character mattered, and he was always watching. Have you ever been judged by your appearance? Have you ever helped someone without knowing who they were? Drop your story in the comments below, and subscribe for more tales of karma and consequences. Remember, you never know who's watching. Treat everyone with dignity. Character is everything.